Okay, let's dive right in. Picture this exact scene. It's May 27th, 2015. Dawn is just breaking over the luxury Hotel Boro lock in Zurich, Switzerland. Inside, you've got some of the most powerful men in global sports waking up, getting ready for the 65th FIFA Congress. But outside, Swiss police are already moving into position. And when the doors finally open, they don't drag these highly recognizable executives out in handcuffs through the main lobby for the press to photograph. No. Instead, hotel staff are desperately holding up pristine white bedsheets just to hide the officials' faces as they're escorted into unmarked police cars.
It's absolutely wild. This wasn't a raid on an organized crime cartel, right? This was the governing body of world football. Welcome to this Footballnomics Explainer, where we're breaking down the data, the hidden money, and the exact details behind the beautiful game's darkest day.
Because what's truly shocking here are the sheer stakes of the Department of Justice allegations. We're not talking about a few shady handshakes in a back room. The DOJ uncovered a staggering $150 million bribery scheme spanning an incredible 24 years. This was systemic corruption operating on a massive global scale, essentially treating the world's most popular sport like a personal ATM. Exactly. And stay with us. At the 7-minute mark, we'll reveal the one man inside FIFA who was secretly feeding information to the FBI for years. So let's look at how this all builds. The criminal enterprise they laid out stretched from 1991 all the way to 2015. That is 2 entire generations of soccer officials. You really have to pause and think about that time span. 24 years. Officials who were just starting their careers learned how to operate within a system that demanded illegal payouts literally from day one. It wasn't a brief lapse in judgment by a few bad actors. It was a deeply entrenched culture of absolute greed. High-ranking FIFA officials, along with leaders of major regional governing bodies, consistently used their positions of trust to solicit bribes from sports marketers. It's unbelievable when you compare how the system was actually supposed to work versus the reality. You have the fair bidding process, right? Companies are supposed to compete openly, submitting their best financial offers for incredibly lucrative television and marketing rights. May the best bid win. But then you look at FIFA's hidden reality. Sports marketing executives totally bypassed that competition. They just paid kickbacks and massive bribes directly to these officials behind closed doors. And in exchange, the officials simply handed them the contracts, completely locking honest competitors out of the market. It was a perfectly closed loop of corruption that guaranteed the people at the top stayed rich, while the actual value of the sport was siphoned away. Right, and while FIFA is this massive global umbrella governing the entire sport, the DOJ investigation found that the systemic rot was really heavily concentrated in the Americas. Specifically within CONCACAF, so North America, Central America, and the Caribbean, and CONMEBOL, representing South America. The sports marketing executives paying these massive bribes were mostly from the Americas, and they were hyper-focused on securing media rights for high-profile international competitions in these specific regions. They demanded kickbacks year after year. It essentially became a toll booth. If you wanted to broadcast the most popular sporting events in the Western Hemisphere, well, you had to pay the men guarding the gates. And the audacity of the numbers is it's staggering. $110 million. That is the amount in bribes tied to just a single event, the 2016 Copa America Centenario Tournament, which was highly anticipated and scheduled to be hosted right in the United States. Just think about the sheer scale of that number for a second. Nearly a third of the legitimate total costs of the commercial rights to that specific tournament were simply diverted into the personal pockets of corrupt executives. And it wasn't just small regional games flying under the radar either. The fraud touched the biggest events out there. World Cup qualifiers, the CONCACAF Gold Cup, the Copa Libertadores, and the Copa America. But perhaps the most shocking finding from the DOJ was that even the historic decision to award the 2010 World Cup hosting rights to South Africa was deeply corrupted. Executives openly admitted to taking part in a $10 million bribe scheme, specifically to influence that exact vote. The biggest prizes in the entire sport were basically bought and paid for, which is heartbreaking when you think about what that actually means for the fans. Hosting a World Cup, that's a moment of immense national pride for millions of people. It boosts economies, it unites entire nations. And behind closed doors, that profound moment was being completely manipulated by executives who were casually trading their votes for millions in illicit payments. Now, this brings us to a massive question, and we're going to pivot hard from football to forensic accounting for a second, because I think a lot of people overlook this. We know the stakes. We know the massive tournaments involved. But seriously, How do you hide $150 million? If you're moving that much illegal, highly scrutinized cash over a period of 24 years, how does it go completely unnoticed by international banking regulators and tax authorities? Well, you can't exactly hand someone a giant suitcase filled with tens of millions of dollars and expect modern banks to just look the other way. The hiding process is highly analytical and deliberately layered. Step 1, they created elaborate shell companies, basically entities that exist solely on paper to obscure the true owner of the funds. Step 2, they routed the money through incredibly complex offshore accounts, using banks in places like the Caribbean and Switzerland, making the cash super difficult to trace as it continuously crossed international borders.
But step 3 is where it gets genuinely clever. They disguise these massive illegal payments by issuing fake consulting fees. I mean, a massive bribe doesn't look like a bribe at all if you generate an official-looking corporate invoice for marketing advice or strategic consulting, right? On paper, to any auditor or financial regulator looking in from the outside, it just looks like a completely normal, justifiable business expense. But in reality, absolutely no legitimate work was ever done. It was purely a money laundering machine meticulously designed to clean the bribes.
Yeah, it was a highly disciplined, well-oiled system, but international financial investigators did eventually unravel it. And while the initial allegations pointed to an astonishing $150 million in bribes, the ultimate success of the investigators was even larger. Over $200 million in illicit funds and hard assets were eventually seized and forfeited by the individuals and corporations deeply involved in the scheme. Which brings us to the obvious question. If the laundering was so sophisticated, how did the Department of Justice ever crack the case wide open?
Which brings us to part 1, the informant, Chuck Blazer. So here's the reveal we promised. For years, Chuck Blazer was an incredibly powerful American FIFA executive. He served as the general secretary of CONCACAF and literally lived a life of absolute luxury. But in 2011, the IRS and the FBI cornered him over years of unpaid personal income taxes. Faced with a very real, very terrifying 75-year prison sentence, Blazer flipped. He became a highly confidential informant, working directly for the United States government while still sitting at the very top table of world football. It's honestly chilling to read his actual admission. In a closed-door Brooklyn court session in 2013, Blazer formally pleaded guilty, and he stated plainly on the official record, "I and others on the FIFA Executive Committee agreed to accept bribes in conjunction with the selection of South Africa as the host nation for the 2010 World Cup." That insider testimony, that was the crucial, foundational brick pulled from the wall that really began bringing the entire corrupt house down. And the details of how he got that information are straight out of a spy movie. Federal agents didn't just have Blazer taking notes from memory. They gave him a highly specialized hidden listening device built directly into an ordinary-looking keychain, or key fob. During the 2012 London Olympics, Blazer invited global football power brokers to meetings in his luxury hotel suite. He'd casually set the key fob right on the table and secretly record some of the most powerful men in sports openly discussing their illicit financial deals. Just wild. Now, before we move on, let's clarify a common online misconception about the immediate fallout of this whole operation. You'll often see the number 47 thrown around regarding the 2015 hotel raids. Just to be clear, 47 represents the total number of counts in the initial Department of Justice indictment, so charges spanning racketeering, wire fraud, and money laundering. It absolutely does not mean 47 people were physically arrested at the hotel that morning. Right, initially, the DOJ indictment formally charged 14 people, but man, that legal net widened remarkably fast. As the global investigation aggressively progressed and more undeniable evidence came to light, that number quickly ballooned. Eventually, over 50 individuals and corporate entities were charged or pleaded guilty. It was a complete and utter dismantling of the corrupt sports marketing hierarchy in the Americas. And here's another crucial detail to correct. Sepp Blatter, the longtime, highly visible president of FIFA, was actually not one of the men escorted out of the Zurich hotel in handcuffs or hidden behind bed sheets that morning. In fact, he incredibly won re-election just 2 days later. But the mounting global pressure, the widening federal indictments, and parallel Swiss investigations ultimately forced his official resignation within weeks, leading to a multi-year ban from all football-related activities. So, looking at the immediate aftermath today, on paper, FIFA has desperately tried to reform its image. Those recovered funds, that massive pool of over $200 million we mentioned earlier, they were largely redirected into legitimate foundations for community football projects around the world. New, highly strict compliance rules were established. But there is a really uncomfortable truth here. Despite the massive scandal and the high-profile criminal convictions, the highly controversial tournaments that were heavily scrutinized in parallel investigations, like the 2022 Qatar World Cup, still proceeded exactly as planned.
Which brings us to the ultimate point of this explainer. The corrupt officials were removed, and the elaborate money laundering networks were exposed and systematically dismantled. But has the underlying system, where billions of dollars are tightly controlled by a select few men, truly been fixed? Do you think FIFA has actually changed since 2015, or did they just get a lot better at hiding the money? Let us know your genuine thoughts down in the comments. And if you found this shocking, our next explainer covers how Juventus fabricated $300 million in fake transfers. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it.